Daniel Vail, professionally known as Johnny Mac. Welcome to the YouTube channel, The Daniel Vail Show. This is going to be added to the podcast section of my YouTube channel, and it's going to be uploaded to the Wrestling World audio podcast on launchpad1.com. This episode, the main topic of this episode, is part 3 of WrestleMania 13. I had no idea that Psycho Sid Vicious was sick, so this is just a coincidence that, for me anyway, that I'm talking about the WrestleMania he main evented in, WrestleMania 13. I've been meaning to talk about this for a long time, and I was not going to mention what I was going through, but my mind was in bad shape back in March or April. So it took me a long time to get back to where my mind was normal, and that's why it took me so long to come back to do this. I was going through depression, that's the best way I could put it. And it's taken me this long to realize how I should do my podcast. And I always do play-by-play, but for the matches. So I like to describe what's going on. But I want to start off by talking about a new segment called Wrestlers' Title Reigns, where I take a wrestler and talk about their title reigns, because a lot of people may not realize this, but there's sometimes on WWE TV come from Ring of Honor or TNA or any company like that, or AEW if you're a Jade Cargill or somebody like that. And if they did something in the other company up until recently when Triple H took over and started to be in charge of the Raw and SmackDown and NXT shows. Before that, when Vince McMahon was still in charge of everything, you would hear people talk about how long somebody like, for instance, AJ Styles is who I'm thinking of, how long he had been in the business, but they would never mention how he was an NWA heavyweight champion. Or you never heard how his friends, Gallows and Anderson, were New Japan World Tag Team Champions for a number of years. So it just gave me this idea about 3 weeks ago. Something was playing in the background on YouTube. I didn't know if y'all could hear it or not. So I wanted to press pause in case y'all could hear this. The first person I wanted to talk about in this topic of discussion was Ric Flair, because since Vince McMahon is the king of revising things in wrestling, I thought I would start talking about some wrestlers' title reigns, because when they talk about a person's title reigns, they always talk about how many times somebody has won a title. And they never give credit. They don't always give full credit the way they should. Like when they inducted Goldberg in the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to take anything away from what he accomplished. It was a big deal when he was first undefeated and to go long undefeated. And it was an even bigger deal when when they decided to put the world title on him. But to call him the greatest champion in the history of WCW is BS, because if you watch WCW, unless you were a WWE only fan, and unless you thought Stone Cold Steve Austin was the greatest star in the world because of your love for the WWE, most people would not even know who Goldberg was, because my best friend who used to watch wrestling with me, he said himself he thought of Goldberg as a Stone Cold wannabe. When we were kids, he told me that. So I got a feeling that was Vince McMahon wanting to put the spotlight on Goldberg, and if you really want to be honest about it, when it comes in terms of that aspect, the biggest star of WCW, because you could not compare him to anyone in any company, in any you can look throughout history, and even though he painted his face up, his entire presentation was unique. That's why I thought he was the greatest champion in WCW, because not only did I think, okay, Ric Flair held the title about 13 times, no, 16 times, they say, but Sting was so over and he was so with the fans. And that was before he even felt the need to change his character. But he was so over with the audience that he did not need the world title. You could have just had him go out there, face off all the members of the NWO, and that was all they needed. So that's why I thought he was the greatest champion, because when you could take just one person who is seen as the face of the company, and you can use that person as the main person you want to go to, that is always going to be I was just talking to my mom about this last night. That is your greatest hero and your greatest protagonist, is when you can take just one person and put them against an entire group and you can find people to join him. That's your greatest protagonist, because your greatest antagonist can find people to join them. So that's how you know Sting was the greatest star. Nobody joined Goldberg, and he didn't want anybody to join him. But Sting would just inspire people to join him, like Don Dallas Page, Roddy Piper, people like that, because that's how strong of a hero he was on the screen. Anyway, going back to my point here. You get Wikipedia. You go to all the way to his championships and accomplishments. Okay. All right, I was not too far off. He did win the titles, the NWA Hold on. They don't have the 10 pounds of gold on here, so I don't know. Well, it was actually not far off. It was 9 times. So, so he won the NWA 10 pounds of gold. The Nick Aldis won, and then of course 5 times. Um, SmackDown, no, Raw GM Adam Pearce held the NWA 10 pounds of gold 5 times, and he took a picture with Ric Flair holding that belt once. So, yeah, that was 9 times he won that. And then when he was in WCW, saying he was a 16-time champion was a mistake right there because he won the WCW title 8 times and the international title 2 times. So that was a mistake right there. So if you combine both the world heavyweight and the international titles, which they had, both titles have the same picture, by the way, on Wikipedia. The Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title went back so far that you could see a champion in black and white right here. It went back so far that the belts were still smaller than what we're used to. The 10 pounds of gold, the reason it's called 10 pounds of gold is because it was big enough to cover the stomach and the abdomen, but it was smaller than what we're used to seeing today. And then when you go down the card when he was starting out, the minute in the when he was starting out, where he was used in the first matches of the show, he won the NWA TV title 2 times, and the NWA Mid Atlantic US Heavyweight title 6 times, and even won the WCW title, US title once. Then in the tag team scene, he won the NWA Mid Atlantic Championship 1 time with Rip Hawk, 1 time with Greg Valentine, and 1 time with Big John Studd. The NWA World Tag Team Championships held 2 times with Greg Valentine, and 1 time with Jack Mulligan. So that made him a 5-time tag team champion in the NWA area. And he was the first ever Triple Crown champion in WCW. And he was inducted in the NWA in 2008. And I think it was a few months after he was inducted by the WWE into their Hall of Fame. And he was actually inducted, by the way, by legendary actor Jack Nicholson, who said that Ric Flair was his favorite wrestler at one time. Then, 1987, he and the Horsemen won Feud of the Year against the Superpowers and the Road Warriors. And he also won Feud of the Year by himself in 1988 and in 1990 when he and Luger had a rivalry on screen. In 1989, he and Terry Funk won Feud of the Year. And in 2008, he won Inspirational Wrestler of the Year. And on June 10th, 1983, he and Harley Race won Match of the Year. Then in 1984, at Parade of Champions, he and Kerry Von Erich won Match of the Year. And he and Dusty Rhodes won Match of the Year in 1986 at the Great American Bash in a steel cage match. I believe that was the match that Dusty Rhodes won the Big Gold Title World Championship belt in. Then, in 1989, he and Ricky Steamboat won Match of the Year at WrestleWar in Chicago, I believe. Then, 2008, he and Shawn Michaels won Match of the Year with his, quote, retirement match in the WWE at WrestleMania 24. The match of the decade, which was 2000 to 2009, was match of the decade, which was his retirement match at WrestleMania 24 also. He was most hated wrestler of the year in 1978 and 1987. Rookie of the year 1975. Stanley Weston Award, which I would actually have to read about this, what this stands for. Okay, well, Stanley Weston Award is a Lifetime Achievement Award in pro wrestling, and it was actually named after the founder and longtime publisher, Stanley Weston, who found. I just said he founded it. Don't need to repeat that part. But he's the reason we even have the PWI in the first place. Anyway, that was started in 2003 because he died. Because Stanley Weston died in 2002. So they, as a tribute to him, they named an award after him in the PWI. First time ever, PWI decided to name two winners a year for the Stanley Weston Award. So in 2008, he won the Lifetime Achievement Award, Wrestler of the Year in 1981, 84, 85, and 86, 1989, and 1992. PWI also ranked him as Wrestler of the Decade in the 1980s. He was ranked number 2 of the top 500 wrestlers in the PWI 500 in 1991, 1992, and 1994. He was ranked number 2 of the top 500 singles wrestlers of the 500 of the PWI years in 2003 of the top 500. He was put in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum in 2006. In St. Louis Wrestling Club, he won their Missouri Heavyweight title one time. He was inducted in the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2007. And in the WWE, he won the World Heavyweight title 2 times. Yes, ma'am. 1-time Intercontinental Champion. 3-time WWE World Tag Team Champions. Once with Roddy Piper and 2 times with Batista. Royal Rumble winner in 1992. He was the 13th Triple Crown Champion. Slammy Award for Match of the Year in 2008 and his retirement match against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24. And he was put in the Hall of Fame in WWE twice. By himself in 2008, and then in 2012, he and all members of the Horsemen, well, not all members, but himself, Barry Windham, Orrin Anderson, and Tully Blanchard, and their manager, J.J. Dillon, were inducted in the Hall of Fame together. First group that I remember being put in the WWE Hall of Fame. Then they made a statue in his likeness in 2017. Also made one for Dusty Rhodes, and they would unveil these statues anytime WrestleMania season comes around. In the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Award, he was Best Heel in 1990, three-time Best Interviews of the Year, 91, 1992, 1994, Hardest Worker in 1982, 1984 through 88, Feud of the Year in 89 against Terry Funk, and a Match of the Year in 83. Yeah, I read that earlier. But they put right here Steel Cage match at Starrcade against Harley Race. Match of the Year in 1986 against Barry Windham at Battle of the Belts 2 on February 14th. Then he and Sting had Match of the Year at Clash of the Champions 1 in 1988. Read earlier about how he and Ricky Steamboat had Match of the Year in 89. Most Charismatic in 1980, 1982, 83, 84, and then in 93. Most Outstanding in 1986, 1987, and 1989. Reader's Favorite Wrestler 84 through 93, and then 1996. Worst Feud of the Year in 1990 against the Junkyard Dog. Worst Worked Match of the Year when he, Double A, Arn Anderson, Ming the Barbarian, Lex Luger, Kevin Sullivan, Z Gangsta, also known as Tiny Lister, and The Ultimate Solution went against Hogan and Randy Savage in a Tower of Doom match at Uncensored 96. And anytime there is a match, by the way, that is considered too hard to be believable, they call that Worst Match of the Year. And I have to be honest, that was the most unbelievable match of the year. I do agree with that. Wrestler of the Year in 82 through 86, 1989, 1990, and 1992. He was also voted as Wrestler of the Year. When he pretended to retire in 1994, that won Most Disgusting Promotional Tactic of the Year. And in 1996, he was part of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame class. Okay. Going back to the Worst Work Match of the Year, I wanted to use this as an example before I forget. As y'all may have heard on my YouTube channel, because I have some past podcast episodes uploaded from Spreaker on here. So, as y'all may have heard, one of my favorite storylines as a kid, from when I was a kid, was when my two favorite managers, male and female, did a storyline where one was chasing after the other. It was the funniest thing because in real life it would not work. But as funny as it was, they were perfect together because they were so opposite. But as opposite as they were, there was enough similarities where they completed each other, just like a marriage is supposed to complete you. You and your spouse are supposed to complete each other. That's how good they were together. And it's like, isn't that ironic? They would not have worked together as a couple because they were too both were too stubborn, the man in the story said so himself, that the real people would not have worked. Well, when you put them together and their characters, they were perfect for each other. And when they finally put together, and it was Colonel Robert Parker, which was a takeoff of Elvis Presley's manager Tom Parker. When you put he and somebody he called a good friend, Sherry Martel, put them together, two complete opposites, but he was over the top in his silliness, and she was over the top of how tough she was. When you put them together, they were perfect for each other. When it was time to put them together, and that actually was the funniest part, because she started kissing him back, he ran away from her. What that reminds me of is the classic Looney Tunes show where Pepe Le Pew thought a cat was a skunk. And then when a skunk met him and fell in love with him, he ran away from the skunk. That's what it reminds me of. When it was time for them to come together, and the reason they were in a story to begin with is because both of their teams were going against each other. In real life, Parker's team, the reason they were put together in real life was because they needed to teach Sherry's team Harlem Heat because of their experience in the business. That I always wondered, why didn't they do this longer? And I have to admit there was not that much chemistry between the two teams. So anyway, when it was time for both of them to kiss each other, the match, I think because they were really good at working, but they were not really good against each other. So I believe the story was strong enough, and the way the two supporting members acted with their men was enough to make it interesting. So that's why that did not win worst match of the year, because the story and the way they worked with each other was so much better than usual that it made you stick around. It made you want to see it just to see what their two people outside the ring were going to do, because you knew from earlier in the kickoff show, you knew something was going to happen, because this was the only time they were able to talk instead of her kissing him and him running away. This is the only time they got to talk without him hitting on her and her hitting him. So that's why I thought I'd mention that, to say that was the worst work match of the year by far. Because as much as WWE was going away from tradition in 1996, some of those matches, looking back at them, were more believable than the Tower of Doom match at Uncensored 96. So that's why I understand that, them voting that to win. Um, Unfortunately, Unfortunately, there's no pause here, so I'm going to end it here. I'm going to try to come back to this later on and add and do both the episode topic and also the beginning of this segment. I promise to be quicker the second time.